Hey everyone. So, I feel that I need to explain what's going to happen with this because I'm sure some of you have been waiting for this playthrough to continue. I've been doing some thinking about this, especially with the recent announcements in regards to the Legendary Edition for the Mass Effect trilogy that they have recently announced. In fact, at the time of this recording, we are a month away from it coming out. Literally a month. It's going to be like May 14th. What you're looking at is me taking a look at the PC versions of the Mass Effect games, because of course I have them on PC as well as consoles. If you are wondering about what I am intending to do in regards to that, I've been thinking this over. Obviously, I want to play the Legendary Edition. Go through all three games in a what has been being advertised and marketed as basically a remaster. They've also been playing up the idea that it was actually going to be a remake, where they were actually trying to make some actual changes to how the game, especially the first Mass Effect game, was going to work. Because, as many of us know, the first Mass Effect game had some programming and coding issues, which was very clear and evident when people were trying to mess around with different ports of it. Remember, originally this game was exclusively on Xbox 360. Then they tried to port it over to PC, and then it didn't make its way to PlayStation 3 for, well, a number of years. Anyone who has messed around with the first Mass Effect game knows that it was very rough around the edges. It was still a good game, but it was like you could tell like the way it ran had issues. And we could go into a discussion about ports, whether or not the porting from 360 to PC was part of the issue, and the issues that came into play with that. But it was also kind of like, when you think about the technology at the time, it's also like easy to understand. I mean, if you look at some of the older games like Knights of the Old Republic, you can still see it looks very rough around the edges. It still runs pretty decently, but yeah. And I've actually even tried out different versions of that. Heck, I've actually played through the entire Knights of the Old Republic game on an iPad. I assure you, I've actually beat the entire game on an iPad. It was an experience getting through that entire game on an iPad. Yeah. If you're wondering why, well, it was something I was curious about. I was kind of experimenting with the idea of playing with games on an iPad, what that was like. Plus, I honestly had actually not played it before, and I didn't have access to play it on a PC at the time. So it's one of those. It was the only option I had to play it on at the time. I wanted to actually play through it and experience it. So, but my point is that even then, it still looked rough around the edges, even though it still runs well. But then we get into this discussion of, what matters more, how it processes and runs, or how it looks. And this is part of the discussion and debate that happens when it comes to things like remakes and remasters. Even the recent announcement of Diablo 2 Resurrected, basically a remaster of Diablo 2. And people say, it doesn't need it because it looks fine and it runs fine, and that is true. Though I will say that sometimes Diablo 2 does look like it could use a touch-up, even though people are fine with how it looks. But I'm just one of those who personally, I'm like, look, I'm not opposed to it. My, of course, issue isn't necessarily the graphics, because many of us grew up in an era where graphics was not a big issue. I mean, for goodness sakes, I grew up in the SNES and N64 era, which, sometimes, I mean, when you look back on some of those games, sometimes they look fine, and then other times they don't look all that good. There's a reason why some people these days when they would use a term to say that this game looks like it would be on the PlayStation 2, it was kind of meant as an insult. that it looks like a game that looks like it would run on the PS2 compared to what it would look like on a PS4 or a PC. So that's kind of the part of the point I'm trying to make here. So I like the idea that they're actually trying to make some core mechanic coding improvements to the original Mass Effect, even to the point of trying to actually do some balancing changes to actually make it make more sense, because there were some things about the way the game ran gameplay wise that at times just didn't really seem to be all that great, where you had to, some of us know some tricks and such of things that we could do. I am curious if they actually will get rid of that exploit that some of us could do on Novaria to actually max out our Paragon or Renegade, or even both. But that's a whole nother thing. But the recent trailer they showed was they were trying to play up the visual differences that they have made to all three games, especially the first one, because really the second Mass Effect 2 and 3 don't necessarily need that much of an improvement. The first one does, in my opinion. I know some people are going to disagree with that. There are plenty of people that think that games from back in that era don't need to be visually improved, which, obviously it can be a preference thing, but honestly I think for quality of life, I think it's actually better for it. This is part of the issue with games like Warcraft 3 Reforged. My biggest issue wasn't necessarily the visual of how good it looked, it was also how it ran from a coding perspective, how well it processed. Did you have any issues to actually get it to run in a very stable manner on your machines? That was one of my main issues. So this brings us to Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I've been thinking about this, and I want to approach this in regards to this playthrough. It's effectively going to be stopped or canceled, however you want to look at it. The PS3 version of these games is effectively over on this channel. I haven't made the decision completely final, but essentially, my time recording on the PS3 is basically over. I'm obviously still going to keep it around for my own personal use, but in terms of using it for recording purposes, it's officially basically being retired, essentially, which includes runs for some of those games that were on PS3, where I'm basically taking the standpoint of they could be continued in the future if they ever decide to get around to, say, a remastered version on later machines. This mainly addresses the Sly Cooper games. I'm sure, I saw somebody asking recently if I was ever going to come back to that. I just don't have the motivation to go back to it with the frustrations I was having with the game. Now, if they ever decide to get around to actually remastering that, I know that Sucker Punch has had issues with that, but then again, they've also been very focused on games like Ghost of Tsushima. So if they ever get around to remastering that to make it for later machines like a PS4, PS5, or even on PC, who knows, then maybe it will continue, but who knows. But as far as Mass Effect, here's what I'm thinking. I am very content with the canon Paragon playthrough that you guys probably saw me do here on this channel, where I had my main male shepherd go through the entire trilogy, Paragon, and then I was going to redo the 3 games as Renegade. The Paragon run is essentially going to stand and stay on the channel as my main canon run, you could call it, at least for my male shepherd. And that kind of leads me into what I'm intending to do with the Legendary Edition. The Renegade run I was doing here is effectively going to be restarted. It's effectively going to be restarted when the Legendary Edition comes out. Here's my intended idea of what I want to do with it. We're going to go through the Legendary Edition, but this time we're going to give Jennifer Hale some love, and we're going to play through as FemShep, and I'm going to show you guys probably what I consider to be my canon run for my female Commander Shepard, which I do have. I've played through this trilogy so many times as both male Shep and femme Shep. So, I have basically my canon choices for both of them. Or actually, I should say maybe all 4 of them, since obviously, you have 2 Paragons and 2 Renegades, right? So, I'm going to try and do a Paragon run as femme Shep, so I can show you guys the choices there that I would do. Plus, also, so I can give Jennifer Hale some love, because she deserves it. She's wonderful. You should have seen her reaction to the announcement for the Legendary Edition. She was in tears. She was so happy, and she was so thankful to all the fans who helped make it happen. She's just so wonderful. I love Jennifer Hale, and she's just such a great voice actress. But the fact that she's also someone who loves to give back to her fans, all the people who support her, just it makes her so much more likable as a person, I just love that. And she does such a great job as Commander Shepard, Femme Shep, as some of us call her, in this trilogy, that I want to do a Femme Shep run for Paragon. Once that is basically done, if I'm able to get around to do a Renegade run of the trilogy, we're going to restart it. I'm going to leave up the 2 I've done here. The first one, Mass Effect 1, Renegade, that's still going to stay up, and this one will also kind of just stay up here. It's basically going to be stopped and canceled, as you could probably consider it an incomplete run, but it's essentially going to be restarted in a separate playlist and run in the Legendary Edition. Now, I've already pre-ordered it on PC, kind of intending to go ahead and do it on, here on my PC. However, there could be some technical issues with that. I've already looked at the minimum requirements, and it's recommending Windows 10. The thing is, I still use Windows 8.1, and the reason for that is because I'm extremely cautious. I've heard some pretty bad things about Windows 10 and many issues that people have had with Windows 10. The other thing is that the last time I tried Windows 10, I effectively got a black screen monitor where I couldn't get out of it for basically several months while I focused on other stuff, and then I had to get a friend who was like an IT friend of ours to help me kind of, figure out how to get out of that. And once I did, I basically never went back to Windows 10 since. But the thing is, I'm noticing a lot of recent games and releases that are coming out are basically encouraging and recommending for Windows 10 to perhaps be the minimum software that people use. So, if that's the case, I'm effectively going to be looking at upgrading my PC to Windows 10 here so that I can be able to actually run the game. Now, if I'm not able to really do that, then I can always be able to acquire it on consoles, and we'll just play Legendary Edition on the consoles, on PlayStation. But because I've been basically shifting from PlayStation to PC mainly, and I've been mainly playing on I've gotten very comfortable with playing on PC these days, I would actually end up preferring to play on PC. I've actually already been playing the trilogy on PC, and yeah, as you can imagine, with it being a shooter, yeah, it's quite. It actually runs pretty decently, and in terms of how it runs and plays on PC. I've even gotten to actually do the DLC that was PC exclusive on Mass Effect 1. So that's the intention. I will obviously be looking at, when it comes out a month from now, I will see how effectively it can run. And we'll see, I'll figure it out as we go from there, and then we'll try and get that underway. If you're also wondering, not just about Mass Effect Trilogy, but if you're also wondering when am I going to continue the Mass Effect Andromeda playthrough, we'll play that by ear. I can either continue that where I was on PS4, though I looked at the previous part, and oh my gosh, I was having some bad sound issues with that version. It partly has to do with the setup I have for PS4 with the audio cable that I use, which sometimes just doesn't sound right, compared to these days where I don't really have that issue at all on PC. So it makes me want to switch over to the PC version, though I'm going to have to do some technical runs in order to see how effectively it's going to be able to run, since we all know that once Andromeda was abandoned, it wasn't exactly in the most stable of conditions. They still left a number of bugs and processing, stability issues with that game once they had the final patch for it. So I honestly am not sure. I've actually been testing it recently, and it's actually frozen my PC a couple of times. So we'll still have to kind of play it by ear to see how that's going to go. But that's basically the intention I have for what's going to be the case for Mass Effect Legendary Edition on this channel. Is that when it comes out, I will see how I can get it to run on PC, see if whether or not I actually have to upgrade to Windows 10 in order to get to run it. I hope not. We'll see. And if that's the case, you can expect me to do a Paragon run of the trilogy as FemShep, and then we will effectively restart our Renegade run of the trilogy on the... I don't think I'll be able to fully recreate the male Commander Shepard that I had for this run we were doing here, but I can just, if I have to, I'll just recreate a new Shepard to be able to go ahead and do a Renegade run. If you would want me to just simply do another FemShep run as Renegade Shep and give Jennifer Hale some more love instead of Mark Meer, I'm one of those who loves both Mark Meer and Jennifer Hale because I just think they both did a great job. And she even gave Mark Meer a shout out, Jennifer Hale, in that little video I told you guys about. It's no stranger, let me say that again. It's not surprising that group, that cast, are friends. They even had a recent anniversary reunion that somebody hosted where you had a lot of the cast get together via a group conference call where you got to see them all on this multiple screens, and they were just interacting with each other like they were longtime friends that they hadn't seen each other well. It was like a high school reunion, and for many of us fans who got to actually see these voice actors who we just fell in love with them and their characters, with their performance. It was just so great. They even did, various lines and such. The guy who played Morden was doing voice lines. He even started doing the Gilbert and Sullivan song that he does here in Mass Effect 2. It was just wonderful. So to see them just be all happy and joyful about this whole thing and about Legendary Edition coming out, it reminded me why this is such a big deal. Because, sometimes, it's like Diablo 2 Resurrected coming out. It's like, oh, okay. But Mass Effect, there's just something different about Mass Effect compared to other series. There's just something gripping about it. Something that really has helped get people to really care about this. And I think that's one of the main things, is that a lot of people they truly care about this series. And it's partly because of the characters and the voice actors, in my opinion. To me, it's not likely you're going to be very fond of a series without really good voice actors that really help you fall in love with the characters. The characters are often, carried by their voice actors. I honestly believe that some characters are just not as memorable without good voice actors to really help make those characters feel like they... I don't know what the proper term is here. It's like trying to imagine Jim Raynor in StarCraft without his voice actor. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't work. Just try to think of some of your favorite characters without those iconic voice actors doing their voices. It just doesn't feel right. You probably would not remember them as much without those iconic voice actors bringing those kinds of performances to them. And I know Mass Effect is not the only series that does that, but I hope that I've made my point. So that is my intended plan for this playthrough. It's effectively canceled, but will effectively be restarted alongside a new Paragon run with FemShep to see how the Legendary Edition of this wonderful trilogy that we love. I know Mass Effect 3 still gets scrutiny and even hate to this day for the ending and all that. But it's not just the ending; it's other stuff. Which I will say, I was probably a little too defensive of 3 back when I first started doing these. I've gotten a little bit more critical of 3 since then, but at the same time, it does still hold a special place in our hearts and my heart. It does have big problems and issues, yes, but there are still things from 3 to this day that I do fondly think of and remember. It has issues as a whole, but there are various moments throughout that I just absolutely loved and, fondly remember. So, yeah. So, I hope that gives you guys an idea of what I have intended for the Mass Effect Legendary Edition and what is probably going to be happening in regards to these runs. I hope you guys will join me for those. I'm sorry if perhaps hearing this news that this run is effectively stopped and is going to be restarted in a way later on, that it's not too bad for you. I hope that the news that I'm going to try and do this in a better, more improved fashion and a higher quality on this channel is perhaps a little bit more uplifting and better news for you. If you want to share your thoughts on this, feel free to let me know in the comments. I basically read every single comment I get. I don't get that many, so when someone comments, I try to pay attention. So I hope you guys will join me for that, and I'll see you guys next time.